We're now all set to bring to you our first panel discussion of the day on basics to beyond reshaping the HR paradigm. And today, HR leaders are transforming how they can deliver forward-thinking capabilities that will help companies respond better in these very, very challenging times. It's an absolute pleasure as we bring to you a power-packed panelists right here. I'd like to introduce to you each one of them as I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Ritu Anand, Senior Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer, Tata Consultancy Services. We also have with us Mr. Gautam Chainani, President HR, Strategic Initiative and Workforce Automation, JSW. A warm welcome to Mr. Rajesh, Padmanabhan, CEO, Talavvy Business Catalyst. We have with us Mr. Yogi Sriram, Advisor and CEO and Managing Director, Group Human Resources, Larsen at Toubro. A warm welcome to Mr. Ankit Bansal, Founder and CEO, Sapphire Human Solution, as we look forward to him moderating this session. It's an absolute delight as we have someone like him who will be weaving together the whole picture. So a very warm welcome to our moderator, Mr. Ankit Bansal, Founder and CEO, Sapphire Human Solutions. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural panel discussion for this wonderful event. My name is Ankit Bansal, and I'm the founder and CEO of Sapphire Human Solutions, and we're delighted to be the knowledge partners for this event. The role of HR manager and of HR function has gone through tremendous change from its inception as a personnel department. In fact, the pandemic has forced organizations to rethink and re-strategize on how they look at their talent, workplaces, and business models. So how will the HR evolve going further? What shape and form will the new HR paradigm take? To talk about this and much more, we couldn't have asked for a more experienced, wiser, illustrious panel than the set of HR stalwarts we have today. A very, very warm welcome to all my esteemed panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for taking time out of your busy schedules. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankit.
Okay, I will open the session with a very, simple, direct, and intuitive question. How will the new HR paradigm look like? Can we start with your thoughts, Yogi?
For me, the new HR paradigm will be ensconced with a lot of work in social psychology. For example, of late, one has been looking at the concept of social chemistry. How do you expand your network? And besides, of course, what Marisa King has written in a book on social chemistry, the whole art and science of understanding why and how humans connect is going to be very important in terms of the HR landscape, in terms of understanding how these connections happens within the companies. How do you have expansionists, to use her language, brokers and conveners, and what impact does it have on employee engagement? So the conventional ways of measuring these kind of parameters and metrics will change based on the new dynamics of understanding and using social psychology. The other, which is, of course, I may be forgiven for being slightly tilted towards that angle, but I think HR at some point of time will achieve a chartered status in this country, and maybe like many other countries like UK and Sri Lanka, etc. The chartered status is going to be very important because responsible reporting. Today, the reporting happens in something called integrated framework, which is prescribed by SEBI for reporting. So responsible reporting, whether it's in the business responsibility report of an annual report or whatever one is referring to, is going to become a new part of the paradigm, because investors, various stakeholders, potential candidates, and all others would love to know about what are the risks, what is material in terms of either joining the firm or investing in the firm or having any interest whatsoever in the firm. I also think that in the new disposition, what is going to be very important is that the emphasis on industrial relations, particularly in our country, with our promise for growing so fast, etc., and with the IMF and other institutions giving very, very interesting pictures of our growth. I'm afraid that the kind of divergence that there is in different layers of society is only going to increase. IR issues are going to become much more real, and I think that is going to be very, very important to address rather than talking about only the nicer parts of HR. So that's the 3 points I wanted to make just to open up.
Thank you, Yogi. Can we move on to Gautam? Gautam, your views, please.
Yeah, sure, Ankit, and thank you for having me on this program. I think if I look at the paradigm, I think I look at it in 3 Ds. The first one, of course, is digital. Somebody once said we are not actually in 2021; we are already in 2025. So I think this whole issue about digital and transformation is going to be the first paradigm that HR is going to face. It's interesting. I was reading somewhere that there are more mobile phones in this world than toothbrushes. Right, that tells you a sense, that gives you an idea about digital, about hygiene. But that's the rate at pace at which mobile phones have been growing. Right, so I think that's going to be the first big paradigm on digital. I think the second issue which comes from that is the democratization of data, which means that data will be available. There will be transparency of data. This will lead to people searching out capabilities and competencies within the organization, which may not necessarily be based on hierarchies. So I think democratization of data and data being more available is going to become another paradigm that we'll have to deal with. And the third one, which I call, is the death of time. We've already seen death of distance with technology, where people are not necessarily working from the office. They could be working from Goa or from anywhere else. But I think what the paradigm we'll have to face from a time perspective is that HR will have to deal with the short term, which is the efficiency and the productivity angles. And simultaneously, it will also have to deal with the long-term issues like agility and resilience and its implications on the organization culture. And that's what I mean by death of time. So these are the 3 Ds I think will be very, very important.
Fantastic, 3 Ds. Ritu, can we come on to you, please?
So thank you for having me, and I just love the articulation which Gautam and Yogi have done, and I'm actually speechless right now. But I will, going with the same flow, I have devised something in my mind called PIL, and positive partnership across the leadership and employee, from a CEO to a trainee, is what I am promoting, encouraging, mandating for my HR functional leaders. And I would say this to a fresh graduate out of an MBA college in HR also, is you will find opportunities for excelling and by partnering with both ends of the chain. Okay. Sometime I have seen a project leader or a functional leader or a department leader or a factory leader, doesn't matter. But shift away from it a bit and specify the focus on both spectrum of CEO to a trainee is what I would say. I is very interesting. It will take some time to settle in, but I call it inspiring inclination, inspiring intent. That as an HR person, you and I don't have the luxury of taking a backseat or being a passive communicator. Not possible. Whether you are a 1-year-old or you are a 50-year-old, doesn't matter. The fact that you have chosen that function, you will have to move ahead with that inspiring communication. Your articulation has to be very motivating. Doesn't matter if you don't have content, just have your voice. I have a very, very fond, very simple thing I used to say, and most people liked it, but many people probably commented also. And I used to say that when an HR person speaks, the end of the room auditorium should be able to hear you. Now, whether you're using mic or nothing, it's up to you. But no content, because you will learn with experience. But at least your voice, what you are saying, the throw should be so powerful. So that is why the intent should be very inspirational to the listener, because you are here to communicate. You are also creating, but you are also communicating and amplifying it. Last is the lasting leadership. That is the PIL of this thing. Lasting leadership, leadership of HR function, leadership of your leader, leadership of your company in the domain is where you are. That should be the focus. And it resonates with very well, Yogi have articulated that the success of the organization cannot be disconnected from HR goals. If organization is not going up and up and up, you cannot survive. That is the mindset you need to have. And I will end by saying, remembering a very old colleague of mine in Chennai. First time I met him when I was just about a 5-6-year-old person, and he was in finance. And when I met him, and very humble, very this thing, and he used to meet me always like this, and he will say, I said, how you are doing? He's saying, because the business is getting the bread, I am winning. And he's probably 70-80-year-old. It was such a simple, humble statement, but it has not gone away in 30 years from my mind. And that is the message very fondly I'm giving to all of you, my HR colleagues who are in the conference.
Thank you, Ritu. Uh, Coming to Rajesh. Rajesh, how do you think the new HR paradigm will look like? Your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Ankit. A lot has been taken away by the three speakers, so I've got to be distinct. So let me make an attempt here, and I'm going to tweak a lot of what I had in mind on my feet right now. Number one for me is, we have grown all along keeping balanced work life as an important attribute. I think the biggest shift that we're seeing is life has gone ahead of work. So it's no more work life, but it is life work. What I mean is, work clearly is a realization, at least in the last 1 year, that it's a subset of life and not the other way around that we've practiced for decades. So that's the first big shift. Number two is, again, conventionally in the last so many decades of our work experience, we have practiced life cycle HR. And I believe that this is the time where it will completely get decomposed and move to a lifestyle HR. Here and now, right now, what's relevant. So a little bit of a myopic and short-sightedness is also coming into play. I'm not saying long-term is not important, but a lot of displacement is happening, because as we build institutions over a long period of time, we're losing sight of some of those myopic ones, and people are actually building some of those stuff in shorter buckets. So they're viewing it in a very, very short-term kind of a view. So I'm saying we've got to destroy some of the aspects of the life cycle one, number two. Along with that, also what comes in is we're going to have a lot of mobility of people that's going to come in. And HR is going to be viewed not as a vertical track, as a destination, but instead it will be viewed as station. So you will have a lot of migrants who will come into the HR, do it for a while, and then come out. And that takes me to the most important point. HR is no more a function in my view. It's a functional conglomerate, because one needs to have not just the HR part of it, but there are strong overlaps of technology, and a couple of them did allude to it very strongly. Gautam started with that. It's very strong. I'm not saying that an HR guy needs to be a CIO, but he needs to understand how to use evolving technologies. Similarly, the business part of it, and time permitting, I'll talk a little bit more about it, but I'll touch the headline. I think the economic value of the enterprise, Ritu did touch upon that. It's going to be very essential. How are we really going to contribute to that? We've spoken a lot in the last few decades as business partner. I think the testing time is now, and a lot has already happened in the last few months, if I were to say. And branding and communication also is going to become very, very essential as far as HR is concerned. Last, I will possibly speak about experience taking a manifold importance compared to careers. I don't think anyone, and if we conventionally start doing career planning, that's really under challenge. Why would anybody plan for a lifespan when there are so many uncertainties around? So people are taking it as experience and they're going to build their entire life journey through experience. It really does not matter. And that's a challenge. No one has the algorithm to get that right. But the point is fundamentally shifting from careers to experience. And whatever it takes to build those experiences, what I would leave you as the 4 points with.
Fantastic. What diverse views, right from social psychology to 3Ds to inspiring, intent and leadership to, economic value of enterprise. I mean, I think we've got off to a rocking start to the session. My only request, gentlemen, and Ritu, we have a lot to cover. So if we can just be more precise and concise in our thoughts, that'd be fantastic. Quickly, we've just come out of a global pandemic, right? Or we are rather coming out. What do you think? And I want Gautam to possibly come on this. What do you see, the role HR function playing to help companies emerge stronger and fitter? Gautam.
Yeah, so thanks, Ankit. So I think, when you look at it from a business perspective, I think all companies were impacted with this pandemic at the same time, right, which happened in March. But the response of all these companies has been completely asymmetric, right? Some you can see today are racing to the top, achieving new heights. You see the technology companies, you see companies like Google, you see some of the pharma companies, right, where the valuation of those companies have increased by nearly 30-40% pre and post pandemic. Whereas some of the other companies are barely surviving, right? So if you look at hospitality, if you look at many of the services businesses, they are going through a crunch time, if I call it. So I think the HR function has to play a multi-dimensional role in this aspect, and no one size fits all can, really give you the answer. But I think there are three key roles that I see HR playing as we come out of this pandemic. And I think the first is going to be driving digital maturity in organizations with a focus more on culture building and change management, not a checklist or a tick box view on, making sure 100 people go through a digital, awareness program. It's more building it through the culture and building it through change management. I think the other thing which is important is that in a virtual world, how are we going to get people connected and engaged, right, at the same time, right? How do we make sure, right? Because digital is going to lead to a lot of, issues around productivity, jobs, reallocation of work, activities, and so on and so forth. How do you keep them engaged? And technology is ever progressing. And I think third part is what some of my colleagues also alluded to, is that how will HR play an enabling role and yet at the same time be accountable for certain critical business functions or critical business issues like, cost, productivities, and so on and so forth. So how does it balance between an enabling role and a role which is accountable for what it's doing? So I see these three issues becoming important from an HR perspective.
Fantastic. So taking cue from what Gautam said, Yogi, if I can bring you in, what competency do you think in this new world order, does the HR heads need to display or have in order to be great advisors to the CEO?
You already mentioned one, Ankit, which is to be more concise. No, I'm just kidding around. but on a more serious note, one is, I think, the ability to make a good judgment, I think, is a very, very important point, because in this very uncertain and ambiguous world where data, in spite of all the digitization that's happening, the environment is very, very ambiguous. I mean, it swings, the economic swings are very, very uncertain and so on. And therefore, the ability to make a judgment about a person. For example, I've seen in companies, sometimes what happens is if a person is rated at a particular slot, that sort of sticks on for many, many years, and leaders need to be helped to say that the person has moved on. You can't keep on looking at the person with the same kind of lens. Second is, I think evidence-based management is very, very important. If Nicholas Bloom could make that wonderful experiment happen on work from home, and thank you, and the merits of work from home, and the demerits of work from home. I don't see why HR people can use experiments, because there's a lot of languishing, in the environment about HR people not presenting their case with enough research and data. I'm not talking about the research which is, which is so futuristic and so esoteric that you can't act upon it, but setting up proper experiments right there in the organization, which are ethical, is a very important dimension. The third is, I think, like every customer now is treated in a bespoke manner. There is uniqueness of each customer's requirement. I think the paradigm of looking at communicating with of many to many, but the HR department understanding what each person's need is in terms of consuming content, in terms of learning styles, is going to be very important. And I'll talk more about that when I speak a little bit about the importance of LXPs, or platforms of learning which are dependent on, or which are based on artificial intelligence, which recommend to each person about, based on their style of learning, about what is the kind of content that is best consumed by them. And lastly, I think quantitative skills in terms of statistics. I'm not talking about advanced finance, and I'm not talking about Monte Carlo model and all that, but in terms of statistics and using statistics, in order to understand where one can, let's say, digitize a process and so on, is very important. We all speak about digitization. We all speak about gamification and many things. But what do we do next? We're still sort of dependent on the big boys like success factors and so on to tell us what to do. So the ability to use Power BI and so on to come to concrete decisions for the, or concrete judgments for the CEO is very important.
Got it. So, Ritu, HR analytics, we talk of digitization. What do organizations need to do in order to, make the HR more effective? I mean, than what it already is.
I'm hoping that this is not really the common situation today, at least not after 10 months, that technology is not the key enabler or key function within an organization. However, without going into the paradigm of where we were and where we are, from web to internet to email to digital and automation and all, the simple thing is that whatever needs to be done to accelerate and enhance the core competency of your organization from people aspect, technology enabler has to be in place 100%. Don't ever measure it now, that cost, as a cost. It's not a cost, it's an investment. You may not see the ROI that you have to stand in front of CEO or CIO, says, justifies why HR needs to be digitized. That conversation should never be encouraged or had. Okay, and you have to find ways to ensure that technology is seen as a business imperative, as important as a financial success or a business success. Because today, as all of us have seen, it's not going to be possible to, companies would have shut shop in 10 months if they were not enabled by technology. Those, Gautam actually alluded to it very, upfront only, that those who did not really look at that, already did not have that in place, did not survive. And we all know that how we order food today, how we are ordering our groceries today much more than we ever did. The people who are our assistants or our helpers at home or in factories or wherever, how enabled they are with their mobile phones, how doctors are consulting us, or we are consulting with them. So technology has to be seen as a absolutely important investment. And if this is the one thing after a commercial success which is important, this is it. And I would say HR has already evolved, at least the lens from where I am seeing. HR technology or HR digitization has actually reached quite a peak The dashboards, the data-driven assessments, and the data-driven analysis and the data-driven decisions, which Yogi has been talking about, are already in some companies or in many companies are already, gone to the roof in the last 1 year, 1 or 2 years. And today, when I talk about inclusion and diversity in a large organization, you can't really do everything instantly. So you need to spot, like zoom into the spots where the enablers are required or intervention is required. So that is how technology is, that power technology has to provide HR an instant solution to a problem which has been which can be is the potential trigger for a chaos in future. So whether the attrition is very high of lateral hires or trainees or existing employees in Vancouver in Canada vis-a-vis in Philippines, the only with technology you can take such decisions. And HR analytics, so much so that analytics and insights has become a very important unit within TCS, just to give you an instant example.
Things are obviously very different when you look at it from a view of a tech company. It's the client who has the software implemented who really knows the pain, right? All right, great. So, Rajesh, you spoke about a very interesting concept of economic value of enterprise. Yogi spoke about the fact that, HR needs to have statistical, skills. Do you think the way accountability of HR within a company is looked at, that needs a rethink?
100%. I think the art of managing people has been perfected by HR as a function. And over a period of time, I think a lot of excellence has been achieved. I think the real challenge that's being posed in front of us is, and everyone has been talking about it repeatedly, is the fact that science has got to be brought in. I go back to my point and say that, HR has become a correlation function. When I say correlation, I think you've got to depend on a lot of expertise. And a lot of my fellow colleagues have also expressed that. So I'm going to be very sharp in this particular response. I'm saying I'm going to give you 10 points, which are the scorecard that I see from my lens today. I mean, right or wrong, I'm at least trying to take a position. So I'm seeing that there are 4 C's in the people part of it. And time permitting, I'll be able to stress, but I don't think I have the luxury. But 100% can answer the how part of it also. Maybe offline, but I don't know I would have the time. The 4 C's that I'm talking about are culture, capabilities, contribution, and credibility in the people part of it. I move on to the technology part of it, and everyone has spoken about it. I think the biggest shift that we're going to see, and I've been in the tech function for very long, and I see that shift from enterprise system into a 3-point, which is clearly applications, data, and networks. I'm talking about the usage of that. And when I'm talking about applications, I think, it's got to be completely convenient to use. So enterprise system becomes more of a repository or a warehouse, and actually your application. So people depend on the application. But let me move to the data part of it. A fundamental challenge for the HR community. Data is not structured. Data is not relational. Data do not sit in databases. It's the destruction of the mindset. Because we will move from internal analytics to social analytics, because people behavior lies everywhere. You cannot be confined to a very small set. That's the power of as far as data is concerned. Yeah. So how do you really crawl the web, and how do you really move much beyond? The third one in the technology is the networking part of it. We're just sitting at the tip of the iceberg. With 5G coming in, the entire life is going to be again disrupted. And if that's going to happen, are we even thinking about it? So we shouldn't be talking just the AI and the ML part of it and deep learning and all that stuff. I think that's something much, much bigger. And we don't need to be experts in this. We just need to see it coming. And how do we adapt the entire workplace? So I've covered the tech part of it, and I'll stick to the economic value part of it that you said. Again, we need not be CFOs, but how are we going to contribute to growth, bottom line, and cash is a fundamental ask. Yeah. so that the more and more you retain, the more and more better you get as far as distribution is concerned. And it's perfectly doable through the people value chain in terms of how each of those can be contributed. Have we ever thought there is something called as a capital expenditure and the revenue expenditure that sits in balance sheets? On the people front, have we ever thought that there's something called as a people investment and the people costs? Accounting standards do not provide that provision. Maybe the time for disruption has come. I think this is some of the challenges. We do not have answers, but I'm just allowing my imagination to go really wild. And if we were to get to any of those, the 10 points that I mentioned, I think life will be different. Again, I've just used my thinking hat, so pardon me if I've crossed the line.
No, absolutely. Sorry, Ritu.
Rajesh, on this one point, that yes, a famous statement, I don't know who made it and when did I use it. CEOs always say that people are our biggest assets, but that asset does not sit in the balance sheet. Agree with you.
Absolutely. And we will take you offline for sure on the how part of it in a detailed fashion, Rajesh. Uh, so I'm going to shift now to the most significant themes, and maybe we can just restrict our thoughts to the three most significant themes that you believe will play out in the HR in the next 2 to 3 years. And, can I start with Ritu on this one? Ritu, what do you think would be the three most important themes that will play out?
For me, since I'm talking to HR community or people with, people who are doing the people function, heart is one of the biggest theme I would, want to talk about it. I amplify it a lot. Somewhere down the line in excellence, our narrative changed, and I'm including myself into it. My narrative became very process oriented, very some nomenclature oriented, step checklist. Have I done this? Okay, legal compliance became very important in our growth journey. And that consumed so much of me that I left my heart somewhere else. And my imagination is not running wild as much as Rajesh's did. The human heart is also having H, but can HR? I was part of that generation when personnel moved to HR. At that time, I was very excited, Rajesh, Gautam, and Yogi, that, human. We completely forgot the resources are actually the dampener. But we were so excited that personnel is becoming human. So, we went on, and how many years it has been, Yogi? So the next...
44.
Yeah. So next is something, which has to be full of heart, because a lot of people are joining HR function, whether they are coming from marketing or business or finance, doesn't matter. So they need to be reinforced that the heart should not lose in this whole people function, whatever it may be they are called. So that is my one theme. I want the next generation to take it up very wholeheartedly so that it stays. And second, I am, again going to talk a language which I haven't spoken. Mindful motivation is the second playbook, or like I pick up your word. So, or ecosystem that I want to create. We've talked, being psychologists, I know what motivation is and how it works. There is an inherent part, there is an acquired part, all that is there. But I'm not bothered about this. I'm saying if I'm in L&T or in JSW or in TCS, I know the ecosystem. So mindfully, my job should be or is only to keep on increasing the motivation levels of my employees, again, end to end, from CEO to a trainee or a fresh graduate. And how do I do it is where my intelligence or learning or academics or innovation or going wild, will come into play. And the organization which allows this freedom to the young ones or senior ones, doesn't matter, or even to a young HR person will be very future oriented, and I can see success on the cards 100%. Last but not the least, taking some words from all three of you, success influencers. HR, you have to be the influencers in the success journey of your organization. I have very consciously stayed away from any IT or tech related parlance. This is pan domain and geography and industry. Success influencer, if your leader sees you as an person who can influence her success, then your narrative will be the most cherished narrative for your leader, be it a first level leader or a leader of leader or your top management. Okay, so these are the three areas around which I want you to build themes for your success, your team success, and your organization success.
Got it. Gautam, can we come to you, please? What do you think would be the three playbooks or three themes I'll play out?
So, I agree with a lot of what Ritu has said, and I'm going to talk first about the stuff which I call the whole performance management piece, and that it actually is going to be how do we really manage the hard skills with the soft skills? How do we manage the head with the heart? And I'm saying this because if you really look at the West today, Google today has a union, right? And there's a communications workers union that has been formed. And the objective of that union has been basically what is going to be Google's role in society, which is more around purpose. And the other one is how do we want to influence and shape the organization culture? So I think how organizations are going to manage performance, how they're going to balance the hard skills like AI and ML and all the rest of the analytics bit with the aspects of the stuff that Yogi spoke about, including empathy and social and emotional intelligence, and all that is going to be extremely critical. So that's a big theme that's going to play. I think the other theme that's going to play out is this whole issue on job design, because tech is making such an impact on jobs and roles that it's going to become a major shifting area. We looked at job descriptions and we looked at job evaluations once in 3 years. I think we'll have to look at these papers once in 3 months. If you look at the role of sales, or let's say a regional head or a sales head, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, the roles have changed because everybody now wants somebody with a certain degree of digital maturity, digital angle, and so on and so forth. And I think the third thing is going to be around the reward and recognition piece, which is going to be more not just about individual rewards, but also how do we manage team rewards, right? And the whole issue about democratization of data has been the fact that more and more companies will have to get transparent. So today, for example, the whole reward and recognition programs will have to get linked to some of the ESG factors that companies want to drive. So I think things like that are going to be extremely critical. So these are the three elements: the reward and recognition part, the performance management part, and the job design element part. So these are the three themes which I think are going to play out for each other.
Correct. Rajesh, what do you think? What would your thoughts be?
Thank you, Ankit. I'll try and be brief so that I'm able to roll back some time into you. Number one is for me, I think the biggest shift will be from resourcing to capabilities. We're not going to be, focusing too much on fulfilling roles, but it's going to be more about capabilities as an exchange. What it really means is how do you develop predictive capabilities ahead of time, and how do you fulfill those capabilities ahead of time rather than worrying about, body shopping and arms. Not important, but I guess what is more important is predicting capabilities and readying them ahead of time. And I think I like the part that Gautam spoke about, the hard skilling part of it. I think development as a word is possibly a little abused. You've got to get to a stage of hard skilling. Yeah. Because the businesses are going through ups and downs. Tech is going absolutely vertical. People aspirations are going through a normal progression curve. And the relevance of capabilities, actually the gap is widening. That's where the focus needs to come in if you have to really bridge this entire macro. That's the first one. Second is community. And I'm going to talk a little bit about community because I'm saying that the entire aspect of how teams are going to come together, integrate and disintegrate is purely on the basis of interest. Yeah, and this is going to be a very huge one with the way of working that we have, and with already that part that I've spoken about, disruptions of careers. So people are going to come together to get an experience, and they will disintegrate. So HR has got to manage this very fluid state of community where people are going to come together and live together. Everyone has been speaking in different parts. Relevance of JD is something Gautam spoke about. So we all agreeing to this, but I think community becomes the second C for me, and I'll stick to the third C. Just to roll back time into you is I'll stick to the commercial value of a business, because only if the business is good, rest of the stuff really comes into play. So again, just to sum it up, capabilities, community, and commercial value.
Commercial
Yeah.
value. Correct. Right. Yogi, if I can come on to you and have your thoughts, please. What do you think would be the three most
Number
significant
one, multi-format learning and LXPs, which is learning platforms which are recommendatory and using AI as very powerful methods, because I think what has happened during the recent times is people's learning style has changed completely. And the pedagogy of teaching in B schools, the pedagogy of learning, for example, now people are talking about things like symbolic math. You don't need to know about the unitary method to really learn how to, divide and so on. So I think learning is going to take a huge kind of a change. We'll go through a change process, and learning organizations have an opportunity to use technology. The second is servant leadership. I mean, while it was nice to read about it in books by Dana Zohar and others who've written about it, and how leaders need to have a lot of empathy, I think HR will have a big role, since you talked about significant themes, in designing programs where the new leadership style is not going to be the macho leader with a Stetson, hat, and with doing downsizing and this and that. A lot of empathy is going to be required. A lot of reaching out is going to be required. A lot of networking is required. And the third is managing biases. I think just like work from home and other technology opportunities have this huge issue of cybersecurity. Using AI has a huge flip side of managing your biases and not baking your biases into your algorithms. So it's going to be very important to understand oneself and biases of not only the community that we live in, but ourselves. That's my three themes.
fantastic? Our team also kind of did our own bit of research, and we came out certain themes which we thought we love to have the expert panel's views on. So if I can, start with you, Rajesh. One of the themes that we identified was a blended workforce. Do you think that's going to become a norm? You're on mute, Rajesh.
Sorry, my bad. Thank you. Uh, Thank you. It's a great question. And blended workforce, if I were to talk of, I did speak about, can I request others to go on mute? There's a little bit of an echo I'm getting. So please, thank you. Yeah. So resourcing to capabilities I spoke about. If I were to look at the entire enterprise of today, I think it's going to be, it always was, but it's getting a little more accentuated to fragment what's going to be core, what's going to be project resources, and what's going to be support. And if you would look at the value chain, we're talking of stakeholders, we're talking of decision makers, we're talking of people who are the care part of it. The people managers used to be fairly high in the entire ecosystem, and then there are those project guys, and then there are support guys. So we're going to have a complete fluid workforce of permanent and workmen, and also flexible and gig and the temporary sabbaticals, roll in and roll out, all forms of stuff which would come into play. And I'm not giving it a kind of a pattern, but one needs to be open to the fact from an enterprise standpoint, as far as adaptability and agility is concerned, and it will happen. The speed at which it will happen now, it will be much higher than what we've been talking about in staffing as a concept also never took off. So maybe that's something that will happen, because the fundamental shift, if I were to look at it, while every organization, every enterprise, have its own core values, what's standing out as common denominators are like fundamental stuff like, health, wellness, lifestyle, care, fun, experience, learning, purpose are like completely common denominators. So if you were to put the entire workforce in that particular category, I think the ways how we're going to staff capabilities and not resourcing is going to be the new way of blended workforce model. And this is possibly the biggest algorithm which will handle the entire the economic value of the business as well. And also, if you even address the denominator part of it, which is the hard part of, Ritu has been talking about it consistently, that also gets addressed. So the numerator and the denominator will deliver that ratio, which is where the blended workforce need to. But going just summarizing it in one sentence, absolutely a must and will happen.
So capability and not resourcing. Cognitive diversity. I know Gautam can write a book on it, but Gautam, tell me more about it. Tell us more about it, and how do you think it's going to shape organizations in future?
So, Ankit, I'll try to do it in 1 minute. So let me try what best I can do. So I think
You have 2-3 minutes, Gautam. Don't worry.
Thank you. So cognitive diversity is actually diversity of thought, and I think this is important because Rajesh has been talking about this whole concept of HR becoming a functional conglomerate of, HR becoming, let's say, a coalition of many functions, of many people, multi-generational workforce, Gen X, you're talking about gig economy and gig workforce, gender. So many issues are coming in, and hence it becomes important for people to have, a diversity of thought, more important than anything else. You see people generally have two kinds of thinking. One is that they tend to apply existing information to all new challenges, right? So it's like old wine in new bottle, right? Whereas the new paradigm today is going to be, how do I generate new knowledge? How do I focus on the network effect, which is, integrating and getting knowledge from others? Focusing on the fact that I don't know this, and this is something completely new, and I have to, learn, or I have to apply that. That is all about cognitive diversity. And I want to touch upon what Yogi also spoke about. Today, because there is no cognitive diversity, you have a lot of issues in talent acquisition. For example, the biases that come in talent acquisition when you're hiring caste, creed, gender, and unfortunately, many of these biases also getting into algorithms, right? So that's a bias that we have to watch out, because it's getting translated there. The other thing is also about performance counseling. I read an article somewhere which said that people are more comfortable getting counseled or coached by a bot rather than by their manager, right? So that is the level of comfort they seem to have with a bot or a socially engineered robot, rather than having it with the manager. So I think in this new age, and what Rajesh has been talking about, cognitive diversity becomes an extremely important thing, because the more diverse of thought we have, the more breadth will our thinking be, rather than just narrowing it down and going deeper and deeper.
Okay. Ritu, Gautam just spoke about the fact that, one is more comfortable, getting coached by a bot. And we've spoken enough about technology and digital making an impact. Do you think the whole, people function is becoming less human as a result of so much of interplay and intervention of technology?
Okay, shortest answer is no. So actually, technology has made people function, or has the potential to make people function a very personalized and a heartful function. Okay, where people get there is an opportunity. Not why I'm saying is, for last, at least in my space, for last 15-20 years, technology has provided more enablement, more engagement, more personalized communication, more personalized connect, more personalized conversations with my people. Where else, without technology, I would have been able to connect and inspire lakhs of people in a company? Not possible. And technology is my friend. I embrace technology wholeheartedly. So that is one angle I want to tell you. Second is the bias, conscious or unconscious, which Gautam and has alluded spoken about now, and which others have also been talking about it. The bias actually completely gets, I'm saying something very boldly, eliminated when you are connecting using technology. Because I'll give you an example. Coaching, yeah, coaching has been much used, maligned, appreciated, function, process, misunderstood, understood. So coaching can only be one-on-one, because the connect will happen when I'm sitting across Yogi, and Yogi is guiding me and coaching me on how to be a good HR head in a company. But I suddenly realized that while that is very good, but when he's coaching me through a telecon, okay, the persona's bias, I don't have a name, but the persona bias is completely gone out of the window, and his words are straight hitting my mind and my heart, and I am absorbing them more wholeheartedly. So my girls and boys, this is the way I see technological revolution coming in into the people function. Very, very consciously I am saying this, that go for it, try for it, embrace it.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you,
Ankit,
Ritu.
Ankit, I just want to add one point, and I just want to
Please.
share this with you, that in 2019, there were 375,000 industrial robots which were added on the manufacturing floor. In fact, there were close to 175,000 service robots added. And this year, they expect the number of service robots to actually go in excess of the industrial robots. So you're talking of 1 million robots, industrial and services, entering the workforce. And that number is exponentially growing. So I want us to keep cognizant of this fact that this is what is happening on the automation side of business.
Got it. Yogi, if I can have your quick views, HR heads becoming CEOs. Do you think HR heads will make good CEOs? And if I'm a head of HR having that aspiration, what should I be doing? You're on mute, Yogi. If you can just unmute yourself.
My views are also based on what I hear from other people. So they're not absolutely original. It's a kind of a blended view. One is, if you take a software company in India, typically a person who handles delivery and then becomes a COO handles a lot of HR. I think Rajesh, during our brief interaction yesterday, talked about it, and is very right. So there's a lot of HR element in a COO's job in a typical IT company in India. And if a person becomes a COO, then the chance of hitting it to CEO is good, but one can't generalize it. So that's one situation. The second situation is a company which needs a very, very high domain. Now, one may say, as you go up the ladder, you need to manage a P&L, your knowledge needs to be more general, you need to know customers, you need to know network, and so on. But I think in companies like Larsen and Toubro, very frankly speaking, the requirement of knowing domain is very, very strong. And, while of course I can generally talk about supercritical boilers and what is the pressure and temperature required, it's more anecdotal and narrative rather than, getting into the depth of it and so on. But I want to take a very brief case study of, let's say, GE. GE for a long time, I think 16 years, had a chemical engineer called Jack Welch who ran the company. And despite all the terms used about him like neutron Jack, etc., which I'm sure he doesn't like, he ran the company very, very successfully. So that's one. And then came Jeff Immelt. For about 6 years, he ran the company, was a little bit ahead of his times and so on. Purchased Alstom for GE, which was supposed to be a very expensive acquisition, and then also went in for a company which was a hydrocarbon company, which is not the wisest. And then came another person who was more, into M&A and stuff. He did a country manager stint in India, a man called Flannery, for about 14 months. And then after that came a person, rank outsider, called Larry Culp. And it's all given in Lights Out, the book which has been documenting all this stuff. And he's been around. Now, none of these people are HR people. So I'm asking myself as a response to your question, that after all the stuff that they've gone through, with GE's share plummeting down to maybe 50% of its original value, would a HR person have added value? I'm just looking at it as a case study. Maybe yes, because I think what GE required is not really reacting to what the previous CEO did, but actually being much more nurturing, empathic, much more people oriented, and so on, and changing the culture very rapidly. That very GE had internet written on its annual report once in 1997, 56 times in 1998. That's the rate of change they've been going through. And they've been very, very strong as an M&A company. And I think in M&A, culture is very, very important. And therefore, perhaps HR has a small edge, or HR people have a small edge in understanding how to manage and dovetail culture whenever you acquire a new company. So maybe in a company like GE, they would have done extremely well by having a woman manager. I'm saying that not condescendingly, but genuinely, because it's important to have some amount of change in that respect too. And also a person who's probably from HR. Maybe they'll give it a try. Maybe they're listening in.
So HR heads can become, good managers. You heard it from Yogi Sriram itself, everyone. So hold on to your aspirations. Okay, I have last 5 minutes, and I have a very interesting question. And there are a lot of heads of HR who are listening to, this elite panel. What do you think HR heads should start doing and stop doing, in order to be more efficient in their jobs? And I'm also mindful to a lot of next gen HR professionals who are in the audience right now. So if anybody wants to give an advice to them, in their answers, most welcome. But I just have 1 minute each, please. And I'm constantly getting calls from the moderator for this. So
Okay,
I would like to
I have
start
a
with
request because
Yogi.
I have also to move on to something else.
Yes,
I
so
think
we'll
HR,
start with Yogi.
yes, the word generalization or the word HR generalist is something that worries me very much. So my request is HR is going to become more and more specialist. Please use the word HR specialist. Please grow your domain in one area. Don't become a generalist. Second is learn. So people like even at my age and stuff are trying to learn Python and R and stuff. Keep learning. I'm actually teaching a young MBA class. So I'm learning how to use the chat mode for class participation, something completely new. So please keep learning. That's extremely important. In terms of stop doing, I already talked about this sort of finding shelter in that generalist role and finding yourself in a situation where you're not a master of any one given trade. Please don't do that. Please become a specialist. That's it.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Can I come to Rajesh? Rajesh, what do you think, heads of
Thank
HR
you.
should
Thank you for
start
the
doing and
yeah.
stop doing?
Thank you for that 1 minute. Broad basing HR so that one really understands people, tech, digital, and the entire aspects of the value chain of communication and even branding, I would say. So, broad basing yourself is a high urgency item. So, one should start working there. Number two, hashtag quant HR. So if you do a hashtag quant HR, it's my hashtag. Yeah. So quant HR, I'll stick to that. It's got to be measured. We've stayed qualitative for too long. It's got to be measured. Even if you have to measure the heart, even if you have to measure the culture, I think everything has got to be measured to know that we are progressing. So hashtag quant HR is the second one which we should start. So far as topic is concerned, I have a little bit of a contentious points, but nevertheless, let me go with it. Number one, life cycle I did mention. So life cycle HR is something that has got to be destructed, completely, destroyed in my view, because it just doesn't hold the time of test with respect to the points today. And the second contentious point that I'm going to say is this destruction of managing people has to happen. No one manages anyone today. I think it's all about process workflows, managing outcomes, managing the entire value chains. Putting people and roles in boxes and dropping them down like this has got to be a mindset destruction. I think leadership and talent sits all across. Leadership sits in the center of the organization. I think that's where we have got to stop. I think this organization structure is the biggest myth and mindset that we've carried for 5 decades. Controversial.
Sorry, I just realized out of my 60 seconds, I took 45, so 15 seconds more. One more part of the anatomy that's very important for HR people to strengthen, especially the L3, L4, and L5 in the backbone, is the backbone.
Okay, all right. Rajesh, Were you completing your point? Is it complete or anything that we missed?
No, I'm done. I rolled back 15 seconds into Yogi.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
fantastic. Gautam, what should we stop doing and start doing?
So I think one is we should stop looking back at the past all the time and say, in 1989, this is what I did and that is what I presented to the board. So I think we need to stop doing that and start focusing on the future rather than on the past. I think what we need to really focus on is, all of us have a will to win and we keep talking about it. But I think more important for the newer workforce, I think it is the will to plan and the will to prepare, which is more important, because only when you do that you will come to the will to win. So I think the planning and preparation becomes extremely important given all the things that technology is throwing at us, right? So that becomes critical. So these are the 2 points I think which are.
Can we have Ritu round it up for all of us, please, Ritu?
Okay, stop following the hierarchy. Stop thinking that more is more. So start thinking less is more. Start being an advisor to your leader. I'm not going to use the word CEO because we are not talking only to the HR heads. So to your leader, they are looking at you for advice. They don't want to follow you. You are following them. They don't know what you know. So don't leave that open on the table for somebody else to grab it. And that is very. And the last thing, or one of the last I will say, is the set career paths for yourself is a big no. I just loved the way Rajesh you articulated. So I was mentally drawing it. I wish I had a board that linear career path, that from, sorry, Yogi, yes, you are right. Journalist has to go from journalist to HR head. No. So I am not seeing a linear path. I am seeing it like this, that I am a generalist. I did a project work with the business understanding. That is the best learning you can do. Get out of HR, do some business work, come back, and then take that path. And like this. So zigzag is the new normal. Zigzag is a new word for the gig economy. Stop making policies and following them to the T. No, please create policies to engage, grow, and retain the best talent in the company.
Fantastic. So zigzag career, start living in the present, not in the past. Stop being a generalist and hashtag #HR. So on that note, guys, I think I had a lot of fun doing the session. I hope all of you enjoyed. There were pearls of wisdom. There was intelligence flowing across. We may have overshot time, but I think every minute was totally worth it. Thank you all for making this such a beautiful, engaging, and a wonderful, insightful session. Thank you so much. Over to you, Isha.
Thank you
Thank you.
so very
Bye-bye.
much, Mr. Bansal. How very rightly put by you. These really were some fantastic insights coming from all our panelists. So I'd like to thank our panel. The first panel discussion of the day, and it's taken us on such a high. So I'd like to thank Mr. Bansal for really weaving it all together so very well, for that very, very healthy exchange of ideas from our panelists. Thank you once again.